Hey there, and welcome back to our journey to uncover the dark, twisted truth of Kanai Ward in Master Detective Archives, Rain Code.
Again with the falling. Why can't it ever be a gentle landing?
Because Shinigami's flotation devices are not beneath us when we land.
Oh, Vivia. This is called the Mystery Labyrinth.
I like how Vivia, in contrast to all the other detectives that end up here, is totally astute.
So, this place is a physical manifestation of mysteries from the case?
You can tell? Well, anyway, this actually isn't my forte.
Why is Vivia's deductive reasoning so good?
Due to the power of death. Her, right?
Vivi is very different from all the other detectives. That makes me very curious about him and his background, and what he has to do with all this.
So you really could see me this whole time?
He could?
It's due to my spiritual affinity.
Right, okay.
Ever
That's
since
what I
was
figured
young,
before.
I've been able to see otherworldly things.
Can you see how beautiful you are?
My forte
And how beautiful your voice is.
training that innate talent. Though I wasn't able to see her clearly like this before. I could tell you were talking to some haze following you around, but that was it.
Well, does she look prettier in this form or the other one?
Until one day, I used my spectral projection at the agency and saw that death got clear as crystal.
I see, the fireplace.
After that, I did some research.
Uh-huh.
I discovered that the WDO Underground Book Vault held something called the Book of Death.
WDO Underground Book Vault, okay.
And also, that someone had taken it.
I'm sure I didn't do it on purpose, and if I did, I believe I had good intentions, and I'm sticking with that.
Did I take it?
I have amnesia. If
Before
I
lost
committed
my
any
memories?
crimes before I got to playing, I don't know of them.
I don't know. Since you're a rookie, I doubt you'd have access to the Book Vault.
See, Vivia's on my side.
Only a handful of people have WDO clearance for that.
So it must have been somebody high-ranking within the WDO that got us the Book of Death for whatever reason.
Just a handful?
And I think that supports my reasoning that somebody on the inside has something to do with Amaterasu and the way Kanai Ward is working as well.
Anyway, you've been using this ability to solve the other cases up till now, haven't you?
Well, most of it has been my own deductive reasoning, and I gotta say, I'm pretty on the goddamn spot.
Yeah.
So, this is also related to the mysterious deaths of all those culprits?
Right, yes, about that.
My guess is, clearing a labyrinth, a materialization of a mystery, causes its true perpetrator to die.
Seems like a pretty coincidental track record, doesn't
If
it?
that's the case, you've killed a lot of people with your own hands, Yuma.
No, I haven't. Dude, they were going to go to prison for life anyway. Do you know how jail works?
Well, I didn't really kill anyone.
Right.
It's just what happens when...
My mind did. Like, I did the plotting for it, but I didn't do any of the physical, you know.
Nope. I may be the one
It's all
who
mini
missiles.
games and shit, you see.
Blood is still on your hands.
Oh, fuck you, Shinigami, really? You're really gonna throw me under the bus like that after all we've been through?
No point in pretending to be a goody two-shoes. You're risking your life to solve these mysteries.
Right, so evidently I'm not the culprit when it comes to their untimely deaths, right?
I see. So you're determined to do this, huh?
Yes.
Sorry, but I don't think I have that kind of conviction myself.
Alright, dude, you're welcome to nap here. I'll see you at the end, bro.
So, I think I'll take a nap here while you go and risk your life.
Sounds good to me, bro. The only downside is I'm not going to be able to look at your beautiful, pretty face the whole time.
You can sleep if you want, but you won't be able to get out.
Is that so?
If you're not with Master when and if he solves the labyrinth, this place will collapse around you. Well, if you don't have any regrets in the real world, you're free to die here.
Regrets. I don't have any of those, but there are still some things I've left unfinished.
OnlyFans. I'm just saying.
Especially after you exposed the mystery of this case.
Not that I'm asking or anything.
What do you mean by
Babaka.
that?
I'll be perfectly clear. I'm just going to tag along. I'll leave the heavy lifting to you.
That is so Vivia's style, actually.
I don't care what you do, just don't get in our way. Well, Master, let's do the usual.
You got it, sweetheart.
Yeah, okay.
I love Yuma. I love his enthusiasm there.
The truth.
He's just like, yeah, okay.
I am.
This is so routine at this point. There's also something, I don't know what it is, but I've had this inkling feeling. The way she says, are you ready to give your life for the truth, I feel has some sort of supplementary, deeper meaning to it. And I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it, but my intuition is pinging me very, very hard. And as with any relationship, foreign objects in the mouth and penetrating the waifu, in order to materialize a spiritual mystical sword that we use to destroy ghosts and demons. Hell yes. We are back in business.
For cutting through mysteries.
And you if you piss me off.
Must be pretty dangerous.
Here you go, Master. Here's your solution key.
Thanks,
Is
babe.
that key something like a clue for the case?
You know way too much, dude. Like, why do you know this much?
Wow. Looks like you're ready to go.
Yep, sure does.
Could you be more of a downer?
Until I get to the first reasoning puzzle, and then we're gonna find ourselves right back here. And he's gonna be like, what happened? Did you fuck up? And I'm gonna be like, yes.
Let's hunt down this culprit who preys on the truth.
Fuck yeah.
We have to walk? This is unbearable.
Vivia, I'm happy to carry you on my shoulders if you want, bro.
Come on! You're bumming me out here.
I thought you were gonna ignore him.
Nobody can ignore Vivia. He's way too fucking pretty. He's gonna have no motivation to do anything, and Shinigami is gonna be harassing him the whole time. This is gonna be awesome. I can't wait.
Say, Vivia, do you remember anything about the case?
Yeah, I'm actually curious about that. Does Vivia retain his memories given his spiritual affinity for being in an alternate dimension?
You mean Dr. Huesca's murder? Or are you talking about when Chief Yako was attacked?
A little bit of both.
Huh? You remember? Everyone else that came here lost their memories.
That's pretty rare. Must be because of his whole spiritual thing.
So the others lost their memories. That's why no one remembers this death god.
Hold on, that's obviously... You know, I never thought about it before, but now that Vivia mentions that, if they lose their memories of Shinigami, all the deaths that happen are inexplainable. Shinigami must be feeding on their life sources for something. And that's why she's tagging along with us and haunting us.
How rude of them. It's thanks to yours truly that those cases got solved.
Is Shinigami going to be the big bad at the end of the game? And we're being deceived the whole time?
That reminds me, I used my coalescence with Fubuki before Vivia. But Vivia is the only one who came into the mystery labyrinth.
I guess coalescence got overwritten. Maybe it only takes the most recent ability. I don't know either.
You don't know? But coalescence is your power, Shinigami.
Relax, will ya? Minor detail.
You would have been better off with Fubuki. She would have been far more useful for this case.
It doesn't matter anyway.
I don't think so.
No one can use their forte here.
I think certain specific conditions of Vivia's forte are going to come into play here. For elements of the murder and elements of the case.
Thank goodness. What a relief.
Jeez, you ever think your lack of motivation could be contagious?
Hey, relax.
They're going to be fighting each other this whole time, and I am totally here for it. So, as usual, I'd like to convey my musings before we begin our descent into the maze of madness for this chapter, now that I've actually had adequate time to mull things over. So, let me begin by stating that as much as I suspected Vivia's direct involvement, I don't believe him to be the one that murdered Dr. Huesca, but I do believe that he may have been the one who initially tripped the blackout. Reasons as to why. He's lazy. 2. He's sleep deprived almost constantly. 3. He's a pacifist. 4. He said that he doesn't want to murder anyone if he can help it, because he can't stand the sight of blood. 5. It just doesn't seem to me like it's in his character, and it's far too simple of a premise for this chapter. That being said, I'm under the impression that the identity of the murderer of the doctor is Yako himself. Now, I'm sure you have a lot of questions, so let's recount the events that took place. Believably, I'm going to start my theorizing when the blackout initially occurred throughout the laboratory. At this time, Yako was there with Desihiko and I, so I'm led to believe that the blackout was either tripped by the Sphinx the slaughter artist person, whom we can't even confirm exists at this point, or an unknown third-party colluder. My bet is on Vivia, given the blackout was tripped before Yako departed the room. Shortly after, Yako leaves to divert the peacekeepers wearing an Amaterasu uniform, stating to wait 3 minutes before we leave. This had 2 purposes, one being to disguise himself and freely infiltrate the laboratory, and the second will come into play a bit later on. Just after that, we run into Fubuki in the hallway. Joined by Fubuki, we head over to Huesca's office and chat with him over the intercom. Shortly after, Huesca is presumably attacked by someone unseen, but I don't think this is when he was actually murdered. I think this was Vivia surprising the doctor by use of his forte to bypass the security measures to create the illusion of a false time frame. We then head to the R&D lab to request an Omapal from the researcher to safely bypass the security measures for ourselves. And here's where things get a little tricky. Upon our initial entry to the lab in the decontamination hall, Omapal's camera appears to go screwy for a minute, and then stabilizes. While I initially believed this to be due to the camera footage being altered, I think the answer is far more simple than what I originally anticipated. During the investigation assisted by Vivia's forte, we discovered that the decontamination duct is big enough to house a single person. So what if the culprit hid within the duct and then dropped down onto and stood on top of the Omapal? It was previously stated numerous times in the specifications that Omapal is capable of withstanding immense weight. Assuming this to be what happened, the bot then makes its way into the gas chamber. It was previously stated once again that one would need a spacesuit of sorts to be able to get through the gas unfazed. What if this is where the second functionality of the Amaterasu uniform came into play? Presumably, the only reason to even attempt to enter the security halls, knowing the dangers it holds, would be someone with the intent to murder the doctor, and the only one with a conceivable motive and the ability to do so by means of the Amaterasu uniform would be Yako, on account of the photograph and what we know of prior events. Beyond the gas chamber lies the electrical floor panel room, and on account of Yuma's summation, there would be no way to discern the correct sequence of floor panels without means of trial and error, which was only made possible on account of Fubuki's time-rewinding forte. So what if the culprit stood upon the Omapal as we progressed our way through the floor panels, using the Omapal to absorb the high voltages in case of an error? Even assuming Omapal to be conductive, the culprit wouldn't have to worry about being fried to death due to knowing the security measures for that room and relying upon Fubuki's forte. Reflecting back to when we first entered the room with the security grid, there was an alarm notice that a hazardous biochemical substance was detected, but that wouldn't apply to Omapal given its robotic entity, so that leads me to believe that there was a human entity present as well, which previously supports my standing atop the head theory. Now onto the grid pattern in itself, which plays an integral role. The electrical grid room had a similar decontamination vent like the lab's entrance hall, but there's one key difference, in that this one is inaccessible, and just so happens to be lined up with the path we needed to take in order to reach Huesca's lab. What if the culprit took advantage of the grid pattern to decontaminate themselves and rid the toxins from their body before the gas from the previous chamber had time to sink in? Upon the end of the security grid room lies the security button for Weska's lab. It was previously stated by the researcher we borrowed the Amapal from that no other functions are operable while the arm is outstretched. So what if when we hit the button for the laboratory, and while the door was opening, the culprit hopped off the bot to the side and snaked their way into the lab and murdered Weska then? Upon our entrance with Amapal to the room, the bot is kicked or pushed over by the fleeing culprit, leaving their identity unknown. Upon our investigation with Amapal, when it first enters the room, we take notice of the security measures never having been deactivated prior to our entry, which tells us for certain that in order to murder Weska, someone must have been physically present with the bot given the circumstances. It was stated by Yuma upon our physical entry to the lab to conduct an investigation that Weska's body was still warm, meaning the murder had to have occurred very recently. Given the time frame and circumstances, I think that cements my theory about the culprit hiding in the initial hall's decontamination duct and dropping atop Amapal to bypass the security and gain entrance to the laboratory. Our investigation of Weska's body is interrupted by the arrival of Yomi Hellsmile, and Yako's scream is heard through the ventilation ducts of the lab. Racing back to the hall, we see a mysterious cloaked figure making their way down the hall from a bleeding Yako, who implies that Fink the slaughter artist is the culprit behind the attack. Fatally wounded, Yako is taken back to rest by the master detectives, and we use our coalescence to complete the rest of the investigation by means of Vivia's forte of spectral projection, allowing us the ability to traverse the lab in a non-corporeal spectral body. In this state, we thoroughly investigate the lab, its security measures, the state of Weska's murder, overhear numerous conversations, and access some previously inaccessible rooms. So let me just break down the key shit real quick like. We can confirm there was a corporeal person in the room with Weska given the boot print we discovered atop the bot's head that wasn't there when we initially borrowed it. In a conversation, we overhear that Weska does not wear shoes in his lab, so that supports that theory. In another conversation, we overhear that Weska has not left his lab in over 3 whole months, and this is evidenced and supported by the system's security logs accessed on Weska's computer. And in another, we hear a researcher complain about bringing him a stockpile of food 3 months prior. Weska was hard of hearing, needing to read lips for communication as we saw with Makoto Kagetsuchi when we first initiated contact. So it's possible that he didn't hear the noises or the alarms of the security systems, or the door opening, nor the entry of an unexpected intruder. Weska aside, my next subject will be a chronicle of the events that took place after the Spectral Forms investigation. Upon our exit from the lab, we're met by Vivia, who threatens us, saying that our inquisitive nature and drive to solve mysteries will bring about calamitous devastation, and he was willing to kill us if necessary in order to preserve the peace and quiet he so desperately pines for, and preserve the nature of the world as people know it to be, in the belief that what if people are incapable of comprehending what lies beyond the looking glass of nature and people's perception of reality. We then hear the voice of Yako's spirit communicating with us, while in our ethereal bodies, encouraging Vivia to aid me in uncovering the truth, and sways him from his threats, and on account of these words, Vivia claims that he envisions the possibility of a peaceful outcome for the world, on the other side of the ensuing chaos, to come and ultimately decides to aid us in our investigation. Joined by Vivia, we explore a records room with some key intelligence missing, presumably having been disposed of by the culprit, and evidence of a map being taken. Returning to the location where Yako was wounded, we uncover a bloodied map and a photograph of a young female researcher, and an indistinguishable man whom I presume to be Yako. Now, this information is all a little bit disjointed here, but what if Yako planted the map and photo as evidence deliberately for us to find in order to piece together the truth of the case? It's obvious that the young researcher in the photo was important in some way or another, so what if Yako disposed of the evidence within the laboratory himself? It's stated in an exchange between Weska and an unknown party that Weska had planned to escape Kanai Ward, and what if killing the doctor was the only way that that intel would eventually actually see the light of day? We know Amaterasu's reputation. In the event of a leak or the doctor's death, it's likely the research would all be destroyed, So what if Yako's motive is for us to inherit the research ourselves and jailbreak it from the depths of Amaterasu in order to expose the truth and be Kanai Ward's salvation from beyond the grave? My final proverbial nail in the coffin is that Vivia stated that Yako had personally requested him and ordered him here. I believe it to be so because parts of this murder would not have been possible without Vivia's forte, such as acquiring the map that was located within the locked room, which only Yomi had the key for. So, Vivia's collusion, at least to some degree, is most certainly absolute here. So, now that you guys know where my head is at, let's delve into the dark, twisted dangers that await within the Mystery Labyrinth.